My wife attempted to claim 70% of my fortune. I handed the judge a concise, 2-page document, and he laughed at her audacity. Support our channel by subscribing, hitting the like button, and sharing this story with those close to you. Your encouragement truly matters. Now let me continue my story. My name is Jonathan Whitmore. I was born in Boston, Massachusetts, and raised in a family where discipline and legacy were woven into every aspect of life. My father, Richard Whitmore, wasn't just a businessman, he was a creator of dynasties. The Whitmore fortune had spanned 2 generations, and by the time it landed in my hands, it carried both enormous responsibility and stern warnings. My father passed away on a frigid January morning. Church bells tolled over the snow-blanketed streets, a solemn reminder of a promise I had made to him long ago. He had repeated it endlessly. Jonathan, safeguard what I've built. Don't let greed consume this family like it has so many others. That's why, when I met Catherine, the woman who would become my wife, he insisted on a prenuptial agreement. At first, I thought it unnecessary, even a slight against love itself. But Catherine signed it without hesitation, smiling warmly and saying it was just paper, that what truly mattered was us. I wanted to believe her. I was already captivated by her gentle laughter, her sharp wit, and the way she could brighten any room. I convinced myself money was merely a backdrop, while marriage was about companionship and trust. For years, I clung to that belief. But as time went on, shadows lengthened. Catherine started seeing my father's wealth not as a family legacy, but as something owed to her. I noticed her eyes lingering on estate documents, overheard her subtle questions about asset distribution. At first, I dismissed it as curiosity. We all want to understand financial security. But curiosity slowly shifted into calculation, and calculation grew into obsession. It began subtly, with her suggesting a move to one of the Whitmore properties in Martha's Vineyard. It will keep us closer to your roots, she said. I didn't object, thinking perhaps she wanted to connect with my history. But soon, her interest expanded to investments, shares, and even the board meetings I had inherited after my father's death. She had never cared about business before, yet suddenly she wanted to know votes, signatures, and profit divisions. I told myself I was imagining things, yet a quiet unease lingered. A feeling I remembered from my childhood when I caught a cousin pocketing coins from my father's desk. A small act, yet it hinted at something larger. Catherine played the part of the devoted wife flawlessly, yet cracks began to appear. Her compliments often carried hidden undertones. You're so fortunate, Jonathan, she'd say, her hands brushing the oak table. Not everyone inherits such security, not everyone marries into it. Her laughter sounded sweet, but it had sharp edges. Still, I loved her. Love blinds you. It convinces you that pointed words are jokes, that searching glances are affection. I believed the prenup would prevent any issues. It had been signed freely, after all. But I forgot one critical truth. A piece of paper cannot quench a hungry heart. And Catherine's appetite grew steadily. I remember one evening after a gala in New York. She wore a silver gown, diamonds glittering around her neck. Standing by the penthouse window, the city lights stretching beneath us like stars, she placed her hand on my arm and whispered, Jonathan, don't you think we should expand? Your father's fortune is just sitting there. We could make it bigger, brighter. I smiled, kissed her forehead, assuming she spoke of shared ambition. Looking back, I now know she meant control. Control over what she had never earned but desperately wanted. My friends tried to warn me. Charles, my college roommate, once pulled me aside after a fundraiser. John, she's charming, yes, but she asks too many questions about money. Be careful. I laughed it off, calling him paranoid. How foolish I was to ignore the advice of someone who had known me long before wealth shaped my life. The truth. Catherine's quiet focus was always my father's fortune. While I spoke of family, she studied numbers. While I dreamt of legacy, she schemed ownership. But I didn't see it then. I was still the hopeful man who believed trust alone could shield a heart from betrayal. It's painful to admit, but the signs were clear. The way she lingered over our estate lawyer's briefcase. The playful question. What would happen if you were gone suddenly? Spoken lightly, wine glass in hand, yet the meaning hit hard. She saw me as temporary, the wealth as permanent. Over time, her silent obsession spoke louder than words. I felt it in quiet moments, in the tightness of her smile when I dismissed financial ideas, in laughter that never reached her eyes when my father's will was mentioned. Love had blinded me, but slowly, painfully the scales fell. Catherine was preparing to turn obsession into action. And I was about to discover just how dangerous a signed document could become when one's partner treats it as meaningless ink. 3 years into our marriage, Catherine left her job. She said she wanted to focus on family, to make our home warm and welcoming. I respected that. Raised to believe a man should provide, I saw it as my duty to shield her from worry. But her idea of home soon expanded far beyond comfort and walls. She abandoned the modest suits of her professional life, opting instead for designer gowns and handbags. Weekly trips to Manhattan boutiques became routine. She called them errands, but errands rarely resulted in $10,000 credit card charges. I tried to reason with her one morning, watching her flip through glossy catalogs. Do we really need all this, Catherine? You haven't worn half the dresses you already own. She smiled without looking up. Jonathan, it's not about need, it's about image. Your father built a name, and I'm simply carrying it forward. People expect us to look a certain way. Arguing with her publicly was impossible. At charity galas, she sparkled like a diamond, her laughter filling the room. People adored her. They'd approach me whispering, "Jonathan, you're lucky. Catherine is stunning." I would smile, nod, and swallow the unease lodged deep in my chest. What they didn't see were the mountains of receipts, the withdrawals, the way she justified every purchase as family necessity. Vacations became another front in the battle. She craved the exotic. Santorini, Dubai, the Amalfi Coast. She would book suites without consulting me, send me itineraries saying, "We need this time together." I found myself agreeing, telling myself that memories mattered more than money. Yet the irony wasn't lost on me. She was constantly glued to her phone, posting photos, curating a life meant for strangers online. Our shared moments weren't ours. They were performances, and I was merely part of the set. One evening, I confronted her. "Catherine, you spend as if our accounts are endless. Even wealth has limits." She turned toward me, draped in silk pajamas, a glass of champagne in hand. "Jonathan," she said softly, almost mockingly, "you inherited a fortune that's lasted 2 generations. You'll be fine. We'll be fine. Stop worrying like a poor man." That phrase cut deeper than I expected. A poor man. I had built my life long before inheritance. Long nights, weekends sacrificed, constructing my consulting firm from the ground up. Yet, in her eyes, my entire identity was tied to the Whitmore name. Love had nothing to do with it. She leaned on wealth instead. It didn't take long for others to notice. My sister Eleanor pulled me aside after Thanksgiving dinner. "John, she's bleeding you dry," she whispered, while Catherine charmed our relatives in the living room. "She has no respect for what father left us." I brushed it off, telling myself she was just adjusting, that she meant well. But the look in Eleanor's eyes revealed she didn't believe it, and deep down neither did I. What unsettled me most was the way Catherine cloaked her spending in virtue. Jewelry became family heirlooms. Luxury cars were for the children someday. We had no children, yet she spoke as though they existed. Each indulgence justified by an imaginary future. I remember the breaking point clearly. Spring in London. Business meetings were scheduled, but Catherine turned it into a shopping spree. At her odds, she insisted on a diamond necklace worth more than some houses. When I hesitated, she leaned close and whispered, "Do you want people to think the Whitmores are stingy? Your father would never allow that." Anger flared for the first time. "My father earned every dollar, Catherine," I said sharply. "This isn't what he built it for." She tilted her head, icy smile in place. "Then maybe you don't know what you're protecting, Jonathan." Her words haunted me. What was I protecting? Our legacy or the illusion of it? Every bill reminded me that while she had stopped contributing years ago, she was still draining everything I held sacred. Yet I remained silent. I convinced myself that sacrifice was part of marriage, that giving, even to exhaustion, proved devotion. I told myself she'd eventually slow down, that youth would mellow her appetite for luxury. I was wrong. Very wrong. Behind her spending lurked something far more dangerous. She wasn't merely indulging herself. She was preparing to claim not just what was in front of her, but 70% of everything I owned. Vacations, jewelry, excuses about family necessities. These were rehearsals for a grander scheme, already drafted with lawyers I didn't even know she had contacted. I didn't realize I was funding my own betrayal. Every plane ticket, designer bag, champagne toast was a step closer to the cliff she intended for me. Then it happened. Late spring, Tuesday evening. I returned from a board meeting in New York, jacket still on my shoulders, when she slid a crisp envelope across the dining table. No dinner, no wine, no civility, just the envelope, white and heavy with betrayal. Her eyes sparkled with triumph and mockery. "Jonathan," she said calmly, "this is what's best for both of us. It's time." I stared before opening it. Divorce papers, demanding 70% of my assets. Hands trembling, not from fear but fury, I whispered, 70%? She leaned back, legs crossed, smugness curling her lips. "I've consulted the best attorneys. You'll see this through, willingly or publicly." The house, filled with portraits of my father and grandfather, felt like it was collapsing. She wasn't just attacking me. She was desecrating the legacy I had vowed to protect. I wanted to shout about the prenup, but her calculated confidence kept me silent. She thought she had already won. Fate intervened. 2 nights later, at my study desk, I powered on the family computer to draft an email, but Catherine had forgotten to log out of iCloud. Her entire digital life lay bare before me. Hesitation gave way to fury. I dove into her messages. What I found drained the blood from my face. Threads with attorneys plotting to twist family law, notes justifying luxury as marital necessity, drafts of lies to present in court, conversations mocking me as the Whitmore wallet. A folder revealed bribes, attempts to manipulate records and erase the prenup. She wasn't greedy. She was ready to bend the law until it broke. I spent hours scrolling through her schemes, each message another dagger. By sunrise, betrayal had hardened into something sharp and cold. I was no longer just a husband. I was a man preparing for battle. I printed everything, organizing emails, texts, receipts into neat files. Then I crafted a concise, devastating 2-page summary capturing the heart of her betrayal. When I next faced Catherine, she was radiant, glowing even, living in the penthouse I still paid for. She arrived at the lawyer's office flanked by men in tailored suits, not glancing at me. "Jonathan," she said coolly, "let's make this quick." I said nothing. I let her team speak, weaving stories of sacrifice and need. Alone that night in my study, I rehearsed the moment. The judge reading those pages, her schemes unraveling, the woman who once claimed love is stronger than money, reduced to nothing but greed. For the first time in months, I slept soundly, finally understanding something crucial. Catherine had orchestrated her own downfall, and all that remained for me was to deliver it. On the morning of the hearing, I stood in front of my Boston apartment mirror, adjusting my tie with deliberate calm. There was no trace of nervousness. The evidence I carried wasn't just compelling, it was irrefutable. Catherine's arrogance had constructed a fortress of lies, and I was about to bring it crashing down with nothing more than 2 simple pages. When I entered the courthouse, the atmosphere was thick with expectation. Reporters lingered outside, eager for any scandal linked to the Whitmore name. Inside, Catherine was already seated with her legal team. She wore a sleek navy dress, pearls around her neck, and a smile sharp enough to cut glass. She didn't look like someone fighting for something lost. She looked like someone arriving to claim her winnings. Her attorneys, 3 men with perfect haircuts and tongues equally sharp, shuffled papers with exaggerated confidence. They nodded to one another as if the verdict were already decided. One leaned toward Catherine, whispering something that drew a cruel, hollow laugh from her. It was the kind of laugh that suggested she thought I was nothing more than a minor obstacle. When Judge Donovan, a silver-haired man known for his keen sense of justice and sharp wit, entered, the room fell silent. He was exactly the type of judge I had hoped for, unafraid of theatrics, focused only on truth. As the proceedings began, Catherine's lawyers launched into their opening statements. They painted her as a devoted wife who had sacrificed her career for our family. Lavish spending, they argued, was for the benefit of the household, necessary to maintain our social status. They spun tales of neglect, loneliness, and my supposed indifference. Every word was polished, a performance worthy of Broadway, dripping with false sincerity. I remained seated, hands folded, my expression perfectly controlled. Inside, though, a storm was brewing. Each lie only strengthened my resolve. Finally, it was my turn. I rose, moving with measured confidence toward the bench. "I won't take much of the court's time," I said evenly. "I simply ask Your Honor to review this document. 2 pages only, truth distilled." I handed it to the bailiff, who delivered it to Judge Donovan. The courtroom fell silent. Even Catherine leaned forward, curiosity flickering across her face. The judge adjusted his glasses and scanned the first page. His brow furrowed, then lifted. By the second page, a chuckle escaped him. He looked directly at Catherine and laughed. Not a polite laugh, but one that reverberated through the chamber, slicing through tension. It was a laugh that said, "I've seen this nonsense before, and it ends here." Catherine's face drained of color. Her attorneys fidgeted, their confidence crumbling. The judge leaned back, still holding the 2 pages. "Mrs. Whitmore," he said sharply, "if you believe this court would tolerate forgery, deception, and outright fraud, you have miscalculated gravely." The silence that followed was suffocating. I kept my gaze fixed on Catherine, watching her mask slip away. Her lips trembled, her eyes darted between the judge and her lawyers, desperately seeking a lifeline, but there was none. Turning to her attorneys, the judge continued, "And counsel, did you truly believe fabricating evidence would go unnoticed? Prepare yourselves for consequences far more severe than a failed divorce claim." In that moment, a weight lifted from me. Months of anger, betrayal, and sleepless nights released with the judge's laughter and Catherine's unraveling. She had thought she could outmaneuver the law, outtweet me, bypass safeguards my father had put in place decades ago. But all it took was 2 pages to expose the truth. The hearing didn't last much longer. Catherine's attorneys, pale and shaking, tried to salvage the case, but the judge cut them off. He declared the evidence sufficient to dismiss all of Catherine's claims, and referred the matter of forged documents and attempted bribery to the proper authorities. When the gavel struck, it was final and absolute. I exhaled, as though holding my breath for years. Catherine rose, no longer the poised woman in pearls, but a hollow figure crumbling in front of the court. She glanced at me once, eyes filled with hatred and despair, but I didn't look away. For the first time, she saw the full force of my resolve. There was no love, no pity, only justice. The ruling was read aloud. She had lost everything, not just the case, not just her claim to my father's wealth, but the entire life she tried to construct on lies. Her lawyer faced harsh reprimand, and was soon behind bars for his complicity. I felt a fleeting pity for him, but then reminded myself he had chosen deceit. For Catherine, the consequences were devastating. She was declared bankrupt. The luxury vacations, handbags, jewelry, the extravagant life, all funded by illusion, crumbled under the weight of truth. Creditors lined up, but there was nothing left. Her reputation, meticulously polished for years, collapsed within days. Those who had once fawned over her now refused to answer her calls. Charitable partnerships ended overnight. She became untouchable, not because of me, but because her actions were now public record. I walked out of the courthouse into the crisp Boston air. Gray skies stretched above, but it felt like the first clear day in years. I inhaled deeply, the chill biting my lungs, and smiled. My father's legacy was intact. The empire that had endured 2 generations had survived another, and I, his son, had honored his vision. The victory was more than financial, it was moral. I had doubted myself for years, questioning whether my silence and endurance were weakness, whether love had kept me bound. Now I understood. It wasn't love. It was fear. Fear of confrontation, fear of what the truth might reveal. And when the truth finally emerged, I was free. Weeks later, Catherine tried to relocate, hoping for a fresh start. But her past followed. No firm would hire her, no friend vouched for her, And even her family turned away, ashamed. I won't pretend there were no moments of conflict. I remembered good times we had shared. The laughter, the trips, the quiet mornings by the fireplace. I wondered if things might have been different if greed hadn't poisoned her heart. But then I recalled the iCloud files, the messages to lawyers, her scheming plans, and realized those memories were masks she wore until she was ready to strike. I rebuilt my life slowly. Work consumed me, but in a satisfying way. I poured energy into projects my father had envisioned. Foundations, scholarships, ventures giving back to the community. Every check I signed reminded me of his values. Resilience, honesty, legacy. People often ask if I regret marrying her. My answer is always the same: no. Without that chapter, I might never have learned the importance of vigilance, of safeguarding what matters, and of recognizing my own strength in the face of betrayal. Her story became a cautionary tale in our social circles. People whispered about her downfall at parties she no longer attended. "Did you hear about Claire?" They would murmur, shaking their heads. I never joined in. The truth spoke for itself. Now, as I sit at my desk with sunlight streaming through the window, I reflect on the legacy my father entrusted me. I think of the battles fought, the lessons learned, the scars earned. Wealth may attract predators, but truth and resilience are shields they cannot penetrate. My wife tried to steal 70% of my fortune. She believed victory was hers before the game began. But 2 pages of truth unraveled her empire of lies. The judge laughed. The world watched. I walked away not just richer, but wiser. Sometimes, the greatest victory isn't what you keep. It's what you discover when someone tries to take it all. Friends, if you were in this situation, what would you do? If you enjoyed this story, like the video, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next story. Comment your city and the moment that struck you the most. See you in the next one.